Shocking truth, how Nebuchadnezzar ravaged Jerusalem in 586 BC. What they never told you. The skies over Jerusalem crackled, heavy with anticipation. It was a fateful day in 586 BC, the air thick with smoke and screams. Nebuchadnezzar, a name that sends shudders down the spine, loomed like a dark cloud over the city. He wasn't just an army, he was a force of nature determined to break the spirit of a people. The walls of Jerusalem, once proud and unyielding, trembled at his approach, a brittle facade ready to crumble under the weight of history. As the sun set, casting a crimson glow, strange omens filled the streets. Citizens spoke in hushed tones about visions of fiery chariots and shadowy figures dancing on the rooftops. Children clutched their dolls, eyes wide with fear, while mothers locked their doors, hearts racing. The whispers of betrayal dared not escape their lips. The walls, adorned with vivid mosaics, felt alive with memories of better days, now twisted by the impending doom that was about to unfold. Tension swirled like the dust in the air. The elite were holed up in gilded homes, but even they couldn't mask the unmistakable smell of fear permeating the city. Distant thunder echoed the shaking ground as Nebuchadnezzar's troops inched closer. Each footfall quaked in unison, drawing the citizens into a collective terror, binding their fates with a connection of shared dread. What would become of them? The weight of silence pressed hard, hearts thudding like drums against their rib cages. One could almost hear the collective gasps, the tight throats whispering prayers to a god they felt had abandoned them. Hey, before we continue with this amazing story, I need to give you an important heads up. Many subscribers have reported that YouTube unsubscribed them without warning. Take a quick second to check the red button below to make sure you're still subscribed to the channel. I'd hate for you to miss any of the exclusive content coming soon. And while you're there, smash that like button, it really helps me out with the algorithm. Oh, and tell me in the comments, which city are you watching from? I love getting to know every amazing person who's part of this community. Your participation makes all the difference. Let's connect. With every moment that ticked by, the air grew heavier. A cacophony of shouts erupted from the distance, piercing the growing darkness. Panic erupted like a storm brewing over the horizon. Families scrambled to gather their loved ones, the grip of desperation tightening as shadows danced in the flickering torchlight. Nebuchadnezzar's army was more than just a wave crashing upon the shores of their reality, it was a torrent of chaos, ready to unleash devastation upon a city clinging desperately to its last breath. As the first breach in the walls erupted in a burst of stone and dust, the city of Jerusalem felt the shivers of fate racing down its spine. Was this the end of an era? Would history remember them as mere footnotes in a tale of destruction? The thought clawed at their insides as the footsteps of doom resonated louder, wrapping around them like a vice grip. Only one question remained: would there be anything left to salvage once Nebuchadnezzar's storm passed? The city shuddered as Nebuchadnezzar's forces broke through, a relentless tide crashing against the crumbling walls. Dust clouded the air, filling lungs with despair, each breath a reminder of the impending doom. Shadows of soldiers surged through the gaping hole, their faces cold and devoid of mercy. The once vibrant streets of Jerusalem echoed with the sounds of destruction as the clash of steel and cries of the wounded painted a grim picture of what was to come. Miriam clutched her son, Eli, pulling him close as they huddled together in a corner of their small home. The sounds of chaos outside were deafening, the night punctuated by desperate screams and brutal laughter. She could feel the fear radiating off Eli, his tiny body trembling against hers. Her heart ached as she tried to shield him from the horrors approaching their door. "Stay quiet, my love," she whispered, her voice shaking. "We must be brave." From her window, Miriam spotted their neighbor, a once formidable merchant, now running for his life. The man's robes billowed behind him as he stumbled over the debris. His eyes, wide with terror, locked onto Miriam's for just a moment. A silent plea passed between them before a soldier's sword gleamed in the torchlight, slicing through the darkness and severing the thread of hope that had tethered them all. The cacophony outside morphed into a terrifying symphony of destruction. The air thickened with the smell of burning wood and flesh, igniting a primal fear that gripped every heart in the city. Who could be spared? Would anyone still be standing when the shadows finally lifted? As the soldiers surged through the streets, the screams of the innocent filled the night like a chilling chorus. Fathers protectively shielded their families, mothers frantically searched for their children. The sound of splintering wood echoed as doors were kicked open, one after another, like dominoes falling in a cruel game. It was a hunt, and they were the game. With every clash of swords, every anguished cry, dread seeped deeper into the hearts of the onlookers. They stood frozen, helpless witnesses to the slaughter, questioning every whisper of faith they'd once held close. They had followed leaders who had promised glory and security, only to find their faith shattered amidst the chaos. In the heart of the tumult, a figure appeared, tall and imposing, Nebuchadnezzar himself. His dark armor gleamed under the flickering torchlight, and a cruel smile danced across his lips. He raised his sword, not just to lead, but to taunt. The king of Babylon reveled in the terror he had unleashed. This was a man who fed off the fear of those below him, a puppet master smiling at the unraveling of what had once brought him annoyance. Suddenly, an unlikely flicker of rebellion sparked within those helpless souls. A burly blacksmith, fueled by rage and desperation, emerged from the shadows, rallying what little hope was left in the crowd. "We will not fall without a fight," he bellowed, his voice cutting through the dread like a knife. But was it too late? Miriam's heart raced at the thought of the blacksmith challenging Nebuchadnezzar's wrath, hope and fear clashing violently within her. Would the flames of rebellion catch fire among the others, or would it be snuffed out before it could even blaze? As the soldiers turned their focus towards the rising tide of resistance, the question lingered in the air. Would anyone survive the clash? The story of Jerusalem hung tenuously on the brink, waiting for fate to make its final move. The ground shook under the thunderous steps of Nebuchadnezzar's soldiers as they pressed toward the blacksmith and his unit, muscles tense and blades glinting ominously. Fear hung over them like a storm cloud, heavy and suffocating, yet that torrential ocean of despair breached with a ripple of defiance. The blacksmith stood resolute, an anchor in churning waters, but Miriam felt her heart gnaw at her insides. "Eli, stay close." She tightened her grip around her son, the materials of their home standing as a flimsy barrier against the chaos brewing outside. With childlike innocence, Eli glanced up at the trembling walls, eyes wide with confusion. "Is the brave man gonna stop the bad men, Mama?" he asked, his voice barely above a whisper, like he feared the answer. Miriam's chest tightened even more. "He has to try," she replied, though doubt cracked her voice. The truth clawed at her. Could rebellion work? Would calls for courage drown out the rattle of the soldiers' armor, as the blacksmith shouted, "Stand with me, friends. We will fight." The hesitant whispers began to transform into murmurs of solidarity. Faces once pale with fear flickered with resolve, and in that moment, hope ignited like a flame catching on dry leaves. This was their home, they would defend it. Yet, as steel clashed with steel, a horrid guttural roar reverberated through the shambles of their street. Nebuchadnezzar, like a spectre haunting the streets of Jerusalem, directed his men like a master conductor leading an orchestra of chaos. "Crush them!" he commanded, his voice laced with excitement and venom. "Let them know the price of defiance." Miriam felt the walls quiver, a piece of the ceiling cracked, dropping dust onto her shoulders. "We need to leave," she urged Eli, alarm rising in her throat. Just as she turned to look for a way out, a cold shadow swept over the doorway. A soldier loomed, black eyes scanning for signs of life. Miriam's heart raced, pumping fear through her veins. She caught a glimpse of the soldier's sword, and panic surged. With every ounce of courage, she pulled Eli behind a barrel, praying they would remain unseen. The soldier scanned the area. "Come out, you cowards!" he shouted, kicking debris aside like it was nothing. Somehow, she mustered enough strength not to think about what might happen if they were found. The horrifying images combating each other in her mind made it impossible to breathe. But then, a glimmer of rebellion emerged while the fear seeped through the cracks. The blacksmith was flanked by a few more struggling souls, brandishing makeshift weapons. They were fashioning courage from desperation as they moved towards the soldiers, shouting for others to join. Even if it means death, we fight for our home. The words fired through the crowd, igniting the flickering fires of bravery that will forever haunt Nebuchadnezzar, or perhaps mark his victory. Miriam dared to peek, heart racing as she watched the blacksmith lead the charge, shoulders back, bloodied cloth wrapped around his arm from earlier skirmishes. He took on multiple soldiers while others joined him, overwhelming the jagged edge of despair. Miriam felt a surge in her chest, a roaring tide of hope washing over the fears that had once bound her, but just as triumph flickered in the air, a distant sound echoed the harsh clash of iron against iron, rising above the cries of the righteous fallen. "What is that?" Eli's voice trembled again, pulling her back into reality. The sky turned a deep crimson as thick clouds rolled in, portending something ominous. Was this Nebuchadnezzar readying another onslaught? The warnings of hopelessness weighed down upon them, hinting that everything was about to change. The soldier, still lurking at the door, began to advance. "Eli," Miriam hissed, sharply. "We have to run. Now." In the corner of her vision, she spotted a path through the rubble. Would they escape this horror? Or was the darkness closing in too fast? As Miriam grabbed Eli's hand, the fight for their home waged on behind them, leaving the fate of Jerusalem hanging by a thread. What would happen when they stumbled upon the shadows lying in wait? Miriam and Eli moved swiftly, skirting around the edges of their crumbling home, ducking under low beams and jumping over broken stones. Every sound felt amplified: the shouts of the soldiers, the clatter of armor, the desperate cries of neighbors who dared to resist. Each step took them deeper into unknown shadows, the thickening air palpable with dread. "Stay close to me, Eli," she murmured, her voice trembling with urgency. Eli nodded, though fear clouded his little face, eyes darting to think they might be discovered at any moment. They reached a narrow passage that led away from the main street, darkness swallowing them like a hungry beast. As they squeezed through the gap, a fleeting thought crossed Miriam's mind: was she leading her son to safety, or further into danger? She couldn't look back. The world behind them was roaring with fury. She had to keep moving. "Is the brave man all right?" Eli asked, his voice barely above a whisper. Miriam's heart ached. "He is fighting, love. He is fighting for us," she replied, though uncertainty gnawed at her insides. Did she even believe those words? A sudden crash echoed down the alley, followed by a panicked shout. Miriam froze, adrenaline coursing through her veins. "Quick! This way!" she urged Eli, pulling him around another corner. Shadows danced on the walls, ominous and threatening, yet she felt pressed forward by a desperate hope that dared to light the darkness inside. The passage opened up into a small courtyard overgrown with weeds, remnants of a better time. Faded memories lingered in the cracked stones. Here, they could catch their breath, regroup their thoughts. Miriam looked around, scanning for a way out. She spotted a low wall that could lead to another street. "Come on, Eli. Climb!" she insisted, her heart pounding as they scrambled over the wall. But when they dropped down, the echoing chaos grew louder. A full-blown battle raged not far off, metal clanging, desperate shouts, and the sickening sounds of men falling. Dark clouds brewed overhead, harsh and low, thickening the air with menace, suffocating any glimmer of hope. "Will the brave man win?" Eli asked, his childlike voice threading through the turbulence, but Miriam struggled to answer. Could courage alone shape victory? Just then, the hair on the back of her neck stood on end. A soldier, more menacing than the others, loomed at her peripherals. He was watching her, ripping right through her fragile barrier of safety. Panic surged anew. Miriam grabbed Eli's hand tighter. "Run!" she cried, and they darted behind a pile of rubble, hearts pounding like drums of war. "Where do we go?" Eli whimpered, his innocent voice trembling. "Anywhere but here." Just then, a loud boom pierced the air, followed by a shaking of the ground beneath them. The roof of a nearby building collapsed, dust swirling like a tornado, obscuring vision and filling their lungs. "We have to move, now!" Miriam yelled, but as she turned, another soldier stepped into view, blocking their path, eyes cold and calculating. Her heart raced, a cyclone of urgency. Eli clung to her side, whimpering softly. "Mama?" he pleaded, the trust in his voice slicing through her. Miriam's mind raced. Behind her, the sounds of battle loomed closer. Ahead, a soldier stood, menacing and unstoppable. She had to make a choice to face the danger behind her or confront the threat in front of her. Anxiety surged as shadows shifted around her. "Stay behind me," Miriam instructed, her breath quickening. But deep down, she felt the weight of her words. What could she do against this armed man, this trained killer? As fear clawed at her throat, a familiar roar erupted from the streets, a cacophony of destruction that meant to tear apart everything she held dear. The smoke twisted, revealing more soldiers coming their way. The world around them spiraled, and hope began to fracture. Then, from the chaos, a glint of silver caught her eye. A small blade lay discarded in the dust, glimmering as if calling out to her. Could it change their fate? The moment was heavy. What would she choose to do? As they stood frozen in uncertainty, the soldier stepped forward, a disturbing grin spreading across his face. "Look what we have here," he sneered, lunging toward them. Miriam's next move could be the difference between life and death. Would she seize that blade, or was it too late? The coming storm was near, and she could no longer wait. Did bravery exist in the face of such overwhelming fear, or was it merely a whisper lost in the chaos? Miriam's heart stuttered as the soldier advanced. Time stretched, the world around her fading into a distant hum. With every fiber of her being, she pressed the thought of Eli into the depths of her mind. He would not witness her falter. She had to act. "Eli, stay down," she whispered fiercely, her eyes locked on that shimmering blade, which flickered in the debris like a beacon of desperate hope. Could she ever muster the courage to seize it? As the soldier lunged, an instinct kicked in. Adrenaline surged, banishing doubt. With a quick glance at her son, she dove toward the blade. The soldier's laughter echoed, cruel and mocking, causing fear to grip her insides. She grasped the hilt, feeling its cool metal bite into her palm as if it were alive. Heat rushed through her veins. In one fluid movement, she whirled around to face the soldier, her voice wavering but defiant. "Get away from us." The soldier halted, surprise flickering across his face, but amusement crept back in as he read the blade's shiny promise, a joke in the eyes of a man trained to fight. "You think you can threaten me with that?" he taunted, but Miriam didn't flinch. Fear turned into resolve. "I'll fight for my son. I'll do anything to keep him safe." Simultaneously, the ground quaked again, the result of another explosion nearby. Eli screamed, a piercing sound that tore through the air like a knife, slicing into Miriam's resolve. She turned, eyes wide with panic, experiencing his fear as raw and palpable. Fear for his mother, fear of losing her, fear for his own life. The soldier took a step closer, his expression darkening. "Then you'll die trying." In that moment, the chaos of the past few hours rushed back to Miriam, the flaring flames, the terrified faces of neighbors, the impending doom. Suddenly, this wasn't just about survival but family, legacy, and love that refused to crumble under vanity and tyranny. "Enough!" she screamed, voice straining and fierce. Without thinking, she lunged forward, blade raised. Her heart thundered as she connected with his arm, the force of her attack fueled by desperation, her body moving on its own. He staggered back, the surprise evident on his face. She was the cornered animal, and she would fight ferociously. Eli's wide eyes reflected awe, too soon twisted by fear, but he remained behind her, trusting, ready to act if he needed to. "Go, Eli! To the alley!" she shouted, brandishing the blade like a wildflower in a storm, the only thing between them and the abyss clawing at their heels. He hesitated, feet shaken by the tremors. "But Mama, I can't now," she urged, already anticipating his lack of movement as she lost herself in the clash of instincts. The soldier regained his footing, his expression hardened. You think you can resist? The moment hung like a fragile thread. Miriam felt the weight of the past and future suspended, ready to snap. With every ounce of strength, she pushed off the rubble, adrenaline fueling her movements like gasoline on a fire. She spun, stepping closer to Eli while keeping her gaze on the soldier. Run! Find your father. It was the urging command she had always wanted to give, the promise that bringing him home safely mattered more than anything, more than the echoes of destruction around them. As Eli finally turned to break into the alley, another explosion rattled their surroundings, sending debris flying. A piece of stone struck her shoulder, a sharp stab of pain forcing her back. The soldier's laughter rang out again, chaotic and haunting, reverberating in the back of her mind as she staggered. You've lost. You can't protect him. Her heart sank, and sweat dripped down her brow. For a fleeting moment, despair threatened to clamp its icy grip around her soul. But then she thought of Eli, his small but fierce spirit. That was enough, more than enough. Miriam charged forward, blade raised, words crashing from her lips like waves against unforgiving rock. You will not take my family from me. As they clashed, each moment intensified, transforming the courtyard into a battleground. Every strike against him brought her closer to reclaiming hope. But would it be enough? In the struggle, she could hear the distant sounds of other soldiers converging, sinister and relentless. And just as she drove the blade closer in a desperate lunge, a shout echoed, sharper than steel. Miriam! Her father's voice, long thought unrecognizable from her memory, soared over the chaos. She faltered for a split second, shock freezing the moment. Did he mean to save her? To join them in this madness? As confusion swirled, a terrifying thought jolted through her. The pounding feet rushing toward them didn't belong to a lone rescuer. There were many, and they were coming fast. Would her fight bring them to safety, or was it the end of her desperate quest? Suddenly, the weight of so many lives hung in the balance. She stood there, breathless and torn, caught between the fury surrounding her and the desperate love driving her forward. At that moment, the ground trembled again, echoing a new threat, and Miriam knew their battle was far from over. But would they evade the approaching tide of destruction, or would it consume them all? Miriam's instincts roared to life, shoving aside her confusion. She couldn't stand there, frozen by uncertainty, while the sound of boots thumped closer. Fear gripped her heart, contracting like a vice. Get away from him! She shouted, the blade now seeming heavy but vital, like a lifeline in the treacherous waters of fate. The soldier's expression shifted from amused to enraged as he took her defiance as a challenge. You're a foolish woman. He snarled, lunging forward with a swift brutality. She sidestepped, the rush of wind barely missing her, but not without a flicker of dread igniting in her chest. The chaos around her barely registered anymore. Just her and this soldier, locked in a deadly confrontation where every move could mean life or death. Miriam swung the blade again, each strike driven by desperate hope. She could hear Eli's rushing footsteps fading in the distance, and with it, her heart tightened. No. He must be safe. She couldn't fail him, wouldn't fail him. Another surge from the explosion shook the ground beneath her, knocking her off balance. Stumbling, she planted her feet wide, steadying herself. The soldier advanced, a fierce grin stretching across his face. His confidence was a battle cry in itself. You're nothing but prey, he spat, brandishing his weapon like he was slicing through air rather than facing a desperate mother, but deep inside, a burgeoning determination unfurled. I may be prey, she declared, glancing toward the way Eli had gone, but I've got claws. With that, she swung her arm, steel glinting as it shimmered in the fractured light. This time, she didn't just aim to fend him off, she aimed to strike true. The blade connected, and a sharp cry erupted from the soldier's lips. Blood spilled, painting the ground crimson, a heavy reminder of what was at stake. As he recoiled, fury and disbelief contorting his face, Miriam seized the moment. Run, Eli! She called out, though doubt steeped in her mind. What if he couldn't hear her? What if he was too far gone? But she had no time to dwell on that. She pressed forward, her heart thrumming alongside the chaos as she followed. Suddenly, from the shadows, another soldier emerged, his face a mask of contempt. Miriam's breath caught. How many were out there? How quickly could this spiral beyond her control? Outnumbered, aren't you? The new soldier taunted, sneering. He underestimated her, just like the others had. Her grip tightened on the hilt. I fight for what I love, she bellowed, ready to confront yet another arm of despair, but across the chaos, she caught sight of Eli's small frame reflected in shards of shattered glass, a glimmer of hope amid destruction. He hadn't made it to safety yet. Her resolve solidified. Eli! She screamed, pivoting to face the new threat. Stay hidden. The soldier laughed, a sickening sound that twisted in her gut. You can't protect him, love. You'll die here, and then what will he have? Miriam's heart raced, but the fury in her veins was blazing. She crouched low, ready to leap or strike, a predator driven by the instinct to protect her young. Over my dead body, she snarled. But even as she spoke, she could hear the distant sound of more boots, like the marching of an inevitable doom. Suddenly, a figure loomed behind her father, backlit by a falling beam. Miriam! He shouted, his voice a beacon amidst the tumult. In that instant, the world expanded and crumbled all at once, her mind reeling with memories of childhood laughter and warm embraces, of safety long lost. But this moment wasn't just about her, it was about making a choice that could alter everything. Could she trust him? Would he be the strength she so desperately needed? But even as hope flickered in her chest, a wave of soldiers poured into the rubble-strewn alley, cutting off their escape. Miriam pushed herself into motion, the blade raising high, preparing for an onslaught. Stay behind me! She shouted as she steeled herself against the encroaching darkness. The air crackled with tension, and a chilling reality set in. The battlefield was no longer theirs to navigate. Would they stand and fight, or would they be swallowed by the very chaos they sought to escape? Fate hung in the balance, teetering on the brink. As she faced the oncoming storm, a question echoed over the chaos: was she strong enough to face the inevitable? With the ground exploding around them, the answer felt terrifyingly close, and impossibly far. Miriam's heart pounded like a drum, drowning out the chaos around her. Her father, once a figure of strength, now felt like a flickering candle, barely lighting the dark abyss they were confronting. The soldiers moved as a well-oiled machine, their formation tight, relentless, and cold. Stay behind me! She shouted, her voice a fierce echo against the rumble of chaos. With her blade raised, the steel gleamed as a desperate spark in the encroaching shadows. She could see her father's worry etched deep in the lines of his face, a betrayal of the strength he once exuded. Don't be reckless, Miriam, he urged, but a sudden explosion nearby drowned out the last of his words, sending them both staggering. Dust poured from the ceiling like rain, and the smell of smoke and death wrapped around them like a shroud. Miriam steadied herself with a thrust of the blade, ready to defend her father, ready to protect her precious son. At that moment, another soldier lunged from the side, his eyes gleaming with malicious glee as he advanced on them, taking advantage of their disorientation. Miriam's instincts kicked in. With a primal yell, she swung her weapon hard. The blade clashed against his, sending vibrations shooting up her arm. They were locked in a struggle, breaths heavy, muscles straining. Just give up. He spat, eyes blazing with rage. You'll be dead soon enough. Your little family will be nothing but a memory. Fury ignited inside Miriam, stoked by the thought of Eli. They'll remember me as a warrior. She shot back, pushing with every ounce of strength. But his weight forced her back, and she felt the wall pressing against her. Desperation warped her sense of reality. Get Eli! She screamed at her father, her voice wild with fear. He needs to be safe. Her father hesitated, then nodded, determination filling his eyes. He turned to sprint into the fray, calling out for Eli. As he darted away, Miriam's world narrowed down to the soldier in front of her. The only thing that mattered was this fight. With a jagged exhale, she gathered her strength. She could feel the shadows closing in. If she faltered now, everything they loved would be gone. A sudden roar emerged from her lips as she pushed her other foot against the wall, accelerating her next strike. The soldier faltered for a second, surprised, and she capitalized on that moment. Her blade slashed across his midsection, and a guttural scream erupted from him as he stumbled backward, clutching the wound. Heart racing, she pivoted to gauge her surroundings. More soldiers cascaded from the alley's jaws, hungry for blood. Where was her father? Where was Eli? A surge of panic clawed at her throat, threatening to strangle her resolve. Bring her down. One soldier shouted, stalking toward her with devilish intent. The others laughed, joining in a chorus that spiraled into a cacophony of threats and mockery. Yet Miriam stood firm. Not today. She shouted, gripping her weapon like a lifeline. But the crowd of hostile faces closed in, a swarm of nightmares descending upon her. Then, out of the mist, there he was, Eli, wide-eyed and terrified, standing at the edge of the collapsing buildings. Her heart split in half at the haunting sight, the innocent boy caught in a tempest he didn't understand. Miriam! He cried, reaching out like a shoot reaching for sunlight, her breath hitched. Eli, run! She screamed, but he wouldn't move, glued in place by fear. Shadows fell across him, soldiers looming over his tiny form. No, she felt herself tearing, one part rooted in the moment, the other yearning toward her son. With every ounce of strength left within her, she shouted again, run, Eli. Please. He seemed to waver, torn between obedience and terror. She knew she couldn't take her eyes off him, not for a second. The anger of the soldiers mixed with her clenching fear. Was this their last stand? As they closed in, their taunts shrouding the air like poison, Miriam stood tall, heart racing. In that blinding moment, she realized, it wasn't just about survival. It was about the fight itself. And then, the ground shook beneath them once more, but this time it felt different, ominous, impending. Something, or someone, was coming. What would it bring? Would it drag them further into darkness, or usher in salvation? The question hung thick in the air, tension vibrating like a coiled spring ready to snap a heartbeat away from whatever fate awaited. The tremor beneath Miriam's feet grew stronger, rattling the dust and debris that clung to the fractured ground. Fear wormed deeper into her gut as she noticed the soldiers around her falter, their jeering laughter pricked by uncertainty. What was about to emerge from the shadows? Get ready! One soldier barked, looking up above, panic creeping into his voice. The mocking tone evaporated, replaced by nervous glances exchanged among them. The air thickened, charged with electric anticipation, twisting her insides into knots. It was as if the earth itself was preparing for a clash more profound than anything she had ever witnessed. Miriam! Eli's voice cut through her turmoil, more desperate now. He remained motionless, a terrified statue at the center of chaos. Sweat trickled down her brow as her gaze flicked from her son to the horde of soldiers creeping closer. Their determination was palpable, a tide of malice surging in synchronized movements. Stay back! She shouted, raising her weapon in defiance. Shadows swirled around her like dark phantoms, but she wouldn't allow herself to be engulfed. Not when Eli was there. Her reason, her light in the oppressive dark. Suddenly, an earth-shaking roar echoed through the alley, reverberating around her like thunder. Soldiers stumbled back, terror in their eyes, and Miriam turned to gaze down the path, her heart pounding in her chest. Then, a figure emerged. Towering amidst the dust clouds, something emerged that looked unnatural, like a nightmarish creature, a fusion of steel and muscle the likes of which she had only seen in whispered legends. It was an armored giant, a hulking beast with glistening black armor that hummed with a strange energy. A great sword swung at its side, fiercely glowing as it caught the light. Miriam! Her father's voice cut through the awe, pulling her back to reality. He reappeared, gasping for breath as he arrived at her side. "We need to move. Now." But as he spoke, the creature surged forward, crashing through the soldiers like they were mere twigs. It moved with a blistering speed, its sword slicing through the air as it struck at anyone in its wake. Soldiers who had taunted Miriam mere moments before now fled, shrieking, their bravado shattered by the unearthly force unleashed before them. Eli took a step back, horrified. "Mom! What is that?" Miriam's mind raced. That beast was a savior and a threat. The soldiers were retreating, but at what cost? What chaos would follow this unexplained power? "I don't know, but we have to get out of here," she yelled, grabbing Eli's arm. They turned to make a run for it, but the ground beneath them shifted again, this time causing her to stumble. The beast continued its devastating path, an impenetrable wall of terror. Waves of danger surged, and she fought to maintain her center, to protect her son at all costs. Her father was beside her, eyes wild, pulling her along. "This way." He guided them toward a narrow gap in the rubble. "Miriam! Eli!" A voice called from the shadows. It was a woman's voice, frantic and urgent. Immediately, they exchanged looks full of confusion and resolve. Who else had survived? Just as they reached the opening, the giant paused, turning toward them with a piercing gaze that sent chills down Miriam's spine. But before she could ponder what it meant, something far worse happened. The earth cracked open, swallowing part of the street whole. Eli's terrified scream pierced through her beside her, pulling Miriam's attention away from the impending calamity. Heads snapped toward the sound, the chaos of the battlefield fading momentarily. There was more to fear than the imposing beast. What had she overlooked? The question hung in the air, weighty and unavoidable. The ground shattered beneath them, and she saw faces in the dust, some familiar, some not. As she looked at her son, wide-eyed and trembling, a sinking dread settled deep in her chest. The earth was not merely parting, it was revealing what lay hidden beneath, a nightmare long buried. Would they find salvation, or were they merely unearthing a deeper darkness? Time froze, and the void yawned wide before them, ready to consume all that they knew. As the ground beneath them splintered, Miriam's heart raced like a runaway train. The air crackled with raw energy and uncertainty. Clutching Eli's arm tighter, she pulled him closer, shielding him with her body as if she could somehow absorb the terror radiating around them. "Mom! What is happening?" Fear laced Eli's voice, his wide eyes reflecting the brilliant glow of the creature as it turned its gaze towards them. All around, chaos unfolded. Dust billowed, debris flew, and the echoes of soldiers' terrified screams became a cacophony she could hardly process. That it roared again, a sound that rattled her bones. She had to think fast. They couldn't stay here. Whatever forces were at work were beyond her comprehension, but one thing was clear, they were in danger. "Run!" Miriam shouted, her voice cutting through the noise. They needed to get to safety. She could barely hear herself over the pandemonium, but instinct drove her to the narrow gap her father had pointed out. Her breath hitched as she pushed through the debris, Eli stumbling behind her. The beast surged forward, its sword slicing down with a ferocious precision that splintered concrete into jagged shards. A soldier barely escaped the blow, diving aside, his terrified cry punctuating the frailty of life in that moment. "What if it comes after us?" Eli asked, fear thick in his voice. "It won't. We're too far," she lied, forcing a confidence she didn't feel. They were deep in a surreal nightmare, buried alive by the events unfolding, an unraveling tapestry of dread, woven tightly around them. They slid through the gap and stumbled into darkness. The world behind them erupted into chaos as walls of rubble fell. The menacing roar of the giant faded, but in its place were deeper tremors, a lurking presence in the shadows. She couldn't shake the feeling that whatever lay ahead was potentially worse than what they had just escaped. "Where are we?" Eli's voice quivered, echoing slightly in the void. "I don't know," Miriam admitted, glancing around. It was too dark to make anything out. Her heart pounded, the familiar sensation of claustrophobia creeping in. All she could see was the outline of her father, crouched low, trying to catch his breath. "Stay close," she instructed, drawing Eli closer as she edged forward, her instincts coiling tighter with each step. They were in some kind of alley base of a building that had crumbled long ago. The wall was cold against her back, a chilling reminder of their current reality. Suddenly, a flicker of light caught her eye. It danced ahead of them, soft and flickering like the flick of a flame. Hope surged through her, but it was tempered with doubt. What if it was a trap? "Miriam?" Her father whispered, and she could hear the tremor in his voice too. "Let's check it out," she decided, that flicker of promise drawing her like a moth to a flame. The darkness of the alley closed in behind them, and every shadow seemed to pulse with threat. As they moved forward, the light flickered again, brighter this time. It illuminated something, a panel embedded in the wall, lined with ancient runes that shimmered with an otherworldly glow. "What is that?" Eli asked, pressing closer, curiosity overpowering his fear. "I don't know." Miriam's words trailed off, a mix of awe and dread swirling in her chest. Running her fingers over the strange markings, she felt a pulse, as if they were alive. And then, the ground began to shake again. Not just a tremor, no, this was something far more violent. The light flickered back to life, and the runes resonated with energy, casting shadows across the darkness. "Help!" A voice cried out from within the wall. It struck Miriam like a bolt of lightning. "Help me! Did you hear that?" Eli's eyes were wide, locked onto the panel as the light brightened. "Who are you? What do you want?" she yelled, her heart racing again, half afraid it could be a trap, but the voice continued, desperate, echoing in the empty space. "Free me before it's too late." Before the darkness consumes us all. In that instant, she faced a choice, to pursue the frightening sound from the depths of the wall, or turn back and flee into the chaos they had just evaded. Every instinct told her to run, but then she saw Eli, caught between fear and longing for answers. The darkness behind them felt hungry, the world shattering into fragments echoed in her ears. "Mom, we can't stay here," Eli urged. But what lay ahead? Could it be salvation or more peril? Shaking, she took a deep breath, her fingers brushing over the runes one more time. We can't leave without knowing." But would curiosity lead them to their doom? They needed to decide fast. A choice loomed, shrouded in mystery as the voices in the dark merged with the roar of the giant outside. Did she have the strength to uncover what was hidden? Would she risk everything? It was a moment where hope and fear intertwined for a heartbeat, and she knew this was just the beginning of something much bigger. Everything was about to change again. Miriam stood in that dim recess of the alley, her heart teetering between dread and hope. The voice from beyond the glowing runes was nearly palpable, laced with urgency as it called out to her. Eli clung to her side, his trembling body pressed against hers, both comforted and terrified by their mother-son bond. "Mom, we can't stay. We need to find safety." Eli's words tugged at her, wrapped in the innocence of a child who just wanted to escape this nightmare. Yet, that voice, it resonated like a soft beacon through their despair. Was there a way out on the other side of this strange wall? Could it be a trap, or the salvation they so desperately sought? "Miriam! We must leave," her father urged, his voice barely above a whisper, anxiety looming over him like a thick shawl. She turned her head to him, catching sight of the worry etched deep within his eyes. Intense memories flickered, her childhood laughter, warmth, comfort, all of it embedded within him. "This isn't just about us anymore, an entire city is suffering. But what if it's a chance to help?" Miriam's voice wavered, uncertain. "What if we can save others lost in this destruction before it's too late? Or doom us all?" he countered. "We have to be smart about this." The trembling beneath their feet reverberated louder, as if the very earth was echoing the urgency of the situation. She felt Eli's grip tighten, his young face drawn in stark horror. It struck her like a lightning bolt. This isn't merely about her, this is about the legacy they leave behind. Eli, I want you to listen closely, she said, lowering to meet her young son's gaze. Whatever happens, no matter how terrifying it feels, I will always try to keep you safe. But we can't run from this call. We need to make a choice together. Mom, his voice trailed off uncertainly, but determination flickered behind his wide eyes. I trust you. In that moment, Miriam's heart swelled with fierce resolve. Then we will not retreat into the shadows any longer. We will step into the light of whatever fate awaits us. She turned back to the glowing panel, her fingertips trembling as they brushed across the runes. The light pulsed deeper, illuminating the darkness that had cocooned them for so long. Whoever you are, we're coming. She shouted into the void. Free me. The voice cried again, filled with a strange mix of courage and desperation that seemed to shatter the air around them. With a heavy breath, Miriam stepped forward, forcing Eli to the side just as the panel shimmered brightly and began to crack. The earth rumbled yet again, but this time Miriam planted her feet firmly, ready to face anything. The sounds of chaos from the battle outside faded momentarily, leaving just the three of them and the voice that filled the void. The crumbling wall broke apart like a fragile shell, and before her stood an entrance bathed in bright, otherworldly light, pulsating with energy that felt warm against her skin. She could hear the essence of life flowing on the other side. It vibrated with promise. Keep close. Miriam urged Eli and her father. Hand in hand, they stepped forward into the light. As they crossed the threshold, a powerful blast of energy enveloped them. Miriam gasped as she felt the warmth wrap around her, seeping into her bones like an embrace. In that moment, she closed her eyes, allowing the darkness surrounding their previous reality to slip away. When she opened them again, they stood in a vast expanse, a place where the air was fresh and filled with warmth. Before them stood a figure shrouded in light, graceful yet strong. You have come seeking me, it said, a voice like a soft breeze. You wish to save your city, to protect what remains. Your bravery has brought you here. Tears pricked Miriam's eyes as she fought to grasp the enormity of the situation. Can you help us? Can you help Jerusalem? Hope must be embraced, even in the darkest of times, the figure stated, their eyes shimmering like stars. The strength you possess will be the very foundation of what is to come. But you must confront the darkness to ignite the light. With a nod, Miriam felt her resolve harden. They would not return to the fear that lingered at their heels, they would become the hammer, striking against the anvil of destruction. They would find the courage to rally others to their cause. As the figure before them transformed into a radiant shape, sparking life into their surroundings, Miriam felt emboldened. We will stand together, and we will fight. She declared, her voice echoing with ferocity and gratitude. Eli clapped his hands. Mom, we will be heroes. Yes. Together, we can change what is happening. The air crackled around them as Miriam felt empowered, purpose surging through her. As the battle resumed in Jerusalem, and Nebuchadnezzar's tempest raged on, the unbreakable thread of hope had woven between them, binding their spirits. And with hope came action. With love came courage. It was time to face the darkness that threatened their world, to reclaim their home and rewrite their fate. And Miriam knew, deep down, this was just the beginning. The screen faded to black as the siege raged on, but within the hearts of Miriam and those who dared to stand with her, hope sparked anew. Don't go away just yet. You need to subscribe now so you won't miss the next exclusive stories that will take you through even more incredible journeys. Smash that like button now to feed the algorithm, it makes a huge difference. And flood the comments section with your reactions and theories about this deep conclusion. Did they make the right choice? What do you think about Miriam's strength? Don't wait even one more second to share this video with at least 5 friends who need to see this epic climax. Your support means the world to us. Let us build this community together.